In the quiet dawn of the medieval world, the land awakens slowly beneath a pale sky, where mist clings to fields of barley and rye, and the low stone cottages of peasants breathe out thin trails of smoke from their hearths as roosters cry and church bells echo faintly across muddy paths and wooden fences. And inside these humble homes, life begins not with abundance, but with ritual survival, where rough hands reach for simple food that has sustained generations, long before doctors' charts or modern fears existed. And at the center of this daily rhythm lies the eggworm from the nest, carried in woven baskets, still smelling of straw and earth and life itself, as a woman in coarse wool cracks the shell against the rim of an iron pan. The sound is soft, yet decisive, echoing through the dim interior, where firelight dances across soot-stained walls and hanging tools. And this single egg is not luxury, nor indulgence, but necessity-rich fuel for bodies that must bend before sunrise, till dark, hauling plows, cutting wood, repairing roofs, and walking miles through rain and frost. Medieval peasants lived close to hunger, close to death, close to the land, and their knowledge of food was not written in books, but carved into muscle memory and bone. They raised chickens, not for profit, but for continuity, feeding scraps, guarding them from foxes, listening for the cluck that signaled nourishment ready to be gathered. Eggs were eaten daily because they were reliable, complete, and powerful, containing strength in a fragile shell during times when bread could fail and harvests could rot, and meat was a rare dream reserved for saints' days and feast bells outside the cottage. The world is harsh wind, cutting across open fields, iron tools ringing as blacksmith's hammer, glowing metal, and the smell of wet soil mixing with smoke and boiled grain. And yet, within this struggle, peasants thrived in ways we have forgotten. Their bodies hardened, their digestion strong, their diets seasonal, unprocessed, and aligned with labor, not comfort. Eggs provided protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, without needing salt, preservation, or slaughter. And as generations passed, this simple food became woven into survival itself, eaten by children, elders, and workers alike, without fear or counting, because the medieval body was shaped by motion, cold, hunger, and sunlight, and what nourished it was judged, not by theory, but by whether it allowed another dawn of work, another winter, survived another year, endured. As the sun climbs higher over the medieval countryside, the world comes alive with movement and sound, and the peasant village hums like a living organism bound together by labor and necessity, where every step taken, every tool lifted, every breath drawn demands fuel that must be honest and strong. The egg continues its quiet presence not only at dawn, but woven into the long hours of work that define medieval life, mixed into coarse bread, stirred into pottage, or carried boiled in cloth, for the fields where men and women bend their backs beneath open skies and relentless seasons. Their days are measured not in calories or cholesterol, but in endurance and recovery, in whether the body can rise again tomorrow, after muscles have been torn and rebuilt by work that modern minds can barely imagine. As iron sickles cut through wheat, the sound rings sharp, and rhythmic birds scatter from hedges, and sweat darkens linen shirts, while the wind carries the scent of crushed grain and warm earth. And within these bodies, eggs serve as silent repairers, delivering strength without ceremony, in a world where survival leaves no room for excess explanation. Chickens wander freely through the village, scratching at dirt and refuse, converting scraps into nourishment through a forgotten efficiency, and the egg becomes a symbol of medieval sustainability long before the word existed. No factories, no labels, no warnings. Just life, feeding life in a continuous loop, understood by instinct rather than instruction. Inside long halls and thatched kitchens, fires crackle, and wooden spoons scrape against clay pots as eggs are shared among families, neighbors, and travelers, because food is communal and fear of it is unknown. Medieval doctors, guided by humors and balance, praised eggs for their warming properties, especially during cold, damp months, when bodies stiffened and illness crept through stone walls and open cracks, and even monks fasting within monastery walls accepted eggs as sustenance permitted by faith and tradition. The contrast with the modern world grows sharper when viewed through torchlight, flickering against timber beams and rough stone, where food was judged by how it sustained labor, not by distant theory. The medieval peasant did not live long by modern numbers yet, within their years. They possessed resilience, strength, and metabolic harmony shaped by movement, daylight, and unprocessed nourishment, and eggs fit seamlessly into this design. As evening falls and shadows stretch across fields, smoke rises once more, and families gather, tired but alive, chewing slowly, listening to the wind brush against shutters, and the distant howl of wolves, and in that quiet moment, the egg remains. Unchallenged, unquestioned, a small fragile vessel that carried life and strength through centuries. While the modern world, far removed from soil and sweat, would one day begin to fear what once kept humanity's and in us. Centuries drift forward and the medieval world begins to fade. The echo of peasant life lingers in the bones of history even, as stone castles crumble, and fields once plowed by hand are swallowed by time, and yet the wisdom of those kitchens, those hearths, those daily rituals, does not disappear. Quietly it is buried beneath layers of comfort, distance, and fear. In the modern world, light comes, not from torches but from screens, and food arrives wrapped, labeled, measured, and warned against by voices far removed from the soil that once defined survival. Doctors speak in limits and numbers, and the egg, once a symbol of renewal and resilience, is reduced to a suspect counted carefully per week, while bodies sit still beneath artificial light and wonder why strength fades. Where medieval peasants walked miles before sunrise, climbed hills, carried loads, and labored until stars returned, the modern body is caged by chairs, temperature control, and constant ease, and food that once fueled movement now collides with stillness, creating imbalance that is blamed on the nourishment itself rather than the life surrounding it. The egg did not change, but the world did, and with it the context in which the human body exists. In the medieval age, food was seasonal, digestion was strong, and fasting came naturally with scarcity, while today abundance removes rhythm and excess replaces instinct, and the ancient relationship between effort and nourishment is severed. Inside forgotten villages swallowed by forest roots and moss, one can almost hear the crack of shells against iron pans, smell wood smoke, feel the rough table beneath tired arms, and sense a harmony that modern science often overlooks. The body responding to honest labor with honest food. This is not a call to return to hunger or hardship, but a reminder that fear has replaced understanding, and that limits imposed without context erase history rather than learn from it. As winter winds howl across empty fields once worked by countless hands, the lesson remains etched in time. Nourishment was never meant to be separated from movement, sunlight, struggle, and rest. The medieval peasant trusted the egg because life demanded it, and survival confirmed it. And perhaps the true mystery is not why they ate eggs daily, but why we forgot the conditions that made such strength possible, and in that forgetting, began to fear what once kept humanity alive through cold, dark centuries of relentless work and enduring hope. As the final embers of the medieval world glow softly in memory, the truth settles not as a verdict, but as a quiet realization carried on the same winds that once bent wheat and rattled wooden shutters through endless winters. The peasant did not argue with food, nor fear it, nor isolate it from the life that demanded its power, and in that simplicity lay a balance forged by necessity rather than choice. In stone villages now lost beneath grass and time, the rhythms of sunrise, labor, hunger, and rest formed a complete cycle, where the body was never separate from the land, and nourishment was trusted because it had proven itself. Season after season, egg after egg, dawn after dawn, modern halls of knowledge echo with measurements, restrictions, and warnings, yet they lack the sound of iron striking anvil, the weight of soil beneath nails, the ache of muscles repaired by honest sustenance. The medieval peasant lived in a world where survival sharpened wisdom and food was judged by outcome, not opinion, and the egg endured because it worked, because it restored strength, because it carried life through cold darkness and endless toil. As rain begins to fall over abandoned fields and ancient paths dissolve into mud, the image of a simple meal shared by firelight returns not as nostalgia, but as context, a reminder that the human body evolved in motion, scarcity, and exposure, not in constant comfort and isolation. The fear surrounding eggs today reflects a deeper fracture between modern life and ancestral design, where food is blamed for imbalances created by stillness, stress, and artificial rhythms, and as that fear grows, the wisdom of the past is dismissed as primitive, rather than understood as adaptive. This is not a call to romanticize hardship nor reject progress, but to remember that health was once inseparable from environment and effort, and that nourishment functioned within a larger story of movement. Sunlight, struggle, and recovery in the final glow of torchlight. Fading into history, the medieval peasant does not whisper advice but offers evidence carved into centuries of endurance that strength came not from restriction but from alignment, and that the egg so simple, so complete, so enduring was never the enemy but a silent ally in humanity's long fight to survive. And perhaps the greatest lesson carried forward through time is that when we fear the food of our ancestors, we may be misunderstanding the life we now live as. The last echoes of this story fade into the long corridor of time. The medieval world stands quietly behind us, not as myth but as witness, and in that silence, a deeper understanding begins to breathe. The egg resting in a rough wooden bowl beside a dying fire was never debated, never feared, never restricted, because life itself provided the answer each day through work, endurance, and survival. The peasant did not live in abstraction, but in consequence, where every choice was tested by cold mornings, empty stomachs, aching limbs, and the need to rise again before the sun. In that world, the body learned truth faster than theory, and food earned trust only by keeping people alive through famine, disease, and endless labor. Today, the distance between hand and harvest has grown so wide that meaning is lost, and what remains is fear, stripped of context, carried by voices that no longer feel the ground beneath their feet. As cities hum and screens glow, the ancient balance fractures, and nourishment, once shaped for motion, is consumed in stillness, creating confusion, mistaken for danger. The medieval peasant did not eat eggs because they were perfect, but because life demanded perfection of function, and the egg delivered strength, warmth, and renewal without negotiation. As forests reclaimed old villages, and wind moved through broken stone, the lesson remained etched into history, that health was never isolated. It was a relationship between body, land, labor, and rest, and when one was removed, the whole system shifted. The modern world asks how many eggs are safe, while the past quietly asks how much life is being lived. In between these two questions lies the real divide. This story is not about defiance nor nostalgia, but remembrance, a reminder that fear often grows where understanding fades, and that ancient choices were not ignorant but deeply informed by lived experience. In the final image, torchlight, dim smoke drifts upward, and a family sits in tired silence, nourished enough to face tomorrow. And in that moment, the egg becomes more than food. It becomes evidence that humanity once thrived not by limiting nourishment, but by aligning it with a life that demanded everything from the body and gave meaning in return. And perhaps the true wisdom left behind is not what medieval peasants ate, but how fully they lived and how clearly their food reflected that life.